she said. "I met with a lawyer to secure your inheritance. So I called my dad and had myself written out of the will." When her lawyer told her, her panic was the clearest thing she ever said to me. It started with a text that didn't even seem malicious at first. Just one of those short, oddly practical messages you read twice because it doesn't fit the tone of your relationship. "Hey babe, I met with a lawyer today to understand how your inheritance works after we're married." It was a Thursday afternoon. I was at work, half listening to a colleague drone on about next quarter's projections. I remember staring at that message, blinking, trying to decide if it was a joke. It wasn't. I replied simply, "Smart." That's all I said. To give you context, I, 32M, had been engaged to Laura, 29F, for about 8 months at the time. We'd been together 3 years. She was ambitious, articulate, and always carried herself like someone who had a plan. I admired that about her. I grew up in a fairly comfortable family. My dad ran a logistics business that he'd built from the ground up. Nothing flashy, but successful enough that when he semi-retired, he made it clear there would be an inheritance for me and my sister someday, mostly company shares and property. It was never a secret, but it also wasn't something I bragged about. In fact, I made a point of paying for everything myself: my apartment, my car, our vacations. My dad's money wasn't my money. Laura knew about it. She'd even joked once, "When you finally inherit that empire, I'll quit my job and be your house CFO." I laughed back then. She didn't. When that text came in, something in me tightened. Not panic, but clarity, like the feeling you get when puzzle pieces you didn't know were missing suddenly click together. There'd been signs, of course. The sudden interest in my dad's company. The questions about how trusts work. The subtle frustration whenever I refused to discuss money. The fact that she'd started asking about prenups. Not in the "let's protect both of us" way, but in the "wouldn't it be romantic not to have one" kind of way. So, I called my dad that evening. I told him everything. The text, the tone, the small details I'd ignored. He was silent for a while. Then he said, "I always trusted your judgment, son. But maybe it's time we test hers." I agreed. The next morning, we met with the family attorney. By noon, my father had filed an amendment to his will, temporarily removing me as a beneficiary. The change wasn't permanent, but legally, it was airtight. If I died, or if my father did, nothing would go to me until further revision. I didn't tell Laura. 3 days later, she came home from a lunch with her lawyer. She tried to act casual, but there was tension in her smile. "So," she said, dropping her bag by the couch, "I talked to this family lawyer about how inheritances work after marriage. Just to be safe, you know." I nodded, pretending to scroll through my phone. "Oh yeah? What did you learn?" She hesitated, just a flicker, then said, "Well, turns out, it depends. But generally, if it's inherited before marriage, it stays separate property. Unless," she trailed off. "Unless what?" "Unless it's somehow commingled, like if we buy a house together using part of it. But, you know, I'd never do that without talking to you." "Of course," I said, smiling. Her eyes searched my face for something. Approval, reassurance, maybe guilt. Whatever it was, I gave her nothing. That night, she was unusually affectionate. Touchy, sweet, the kind of warmth that feels rehearsed. I played along. A week passed. Then another. On the third week, she came home looking pale. She dropped her purse, didn't say hello, just sat on the edge of the bed and muttered, "Your dad hates me." "Why would you say that?" I asked. "I had a call with my lawyer today. He said he reached out to confirm some things with your dad's attorney. Something about estate structure. Apparently, your name's been removed from the will." I feigned confusion. "Removed? That can't be right." She looked up sharply. "Did you know about this?" I shrugged slightly. "No idea. But that's odd, isn't it? If I'm not in the will, there's nothing to worry about anymore, right?" Her face twitched, just for a moment, like she was trying to decide whether to cry or scream. "Jake, this isn't funny," she said finally. "It's not about the money. It's about transparency. I just wanted to make sure everything was fair." I leaned against the doorway. "Fair for who?" Her jaw tightened. She didn't answer. That was the first night she slept on the couch. A few days later, I got a call from her lawyer's office, asking if I'd be available to discuss the future estate implications of our upcoming marriage. I told them to contact my lawyer instead. That's when Laura panicked. She showed up at my office unannounced, eyes red, voice trembling. I think we started this all wrong. I love you, Jake. I don't care about your dad's money. I swear I don't. Then why hire a lawyer? She froze. Because I thought that's what smart people do before marriage. Just being prepared. Prepared for what? Again, silence. That was the moment I knew it was over. Not because she was greedy. I could have forgiven that. But because she was calculated. Every word, every "I love you" came with a hidden clause. So, I told her the truth. I told her my dad had rewritten the will weeks ago, after that first text. I told her that the lawyer she'd met had likely found that out before she ever came home that night, pretending everything was fine. Her face went white. You what? I just wanted to see what mattered more to you. Me, or the number attached to my name. She started crying then. Real tears. But they weren't the kind that come from love. They were the kind that come from loss. You've ruined everything, she said. I nodded. No, you just showed me what everything really was. I handed her back the engagement ring. She didn't even take it. When she finally left, I sat in silence for a long time, phone buzzing with unread messages. My father texted only once. Proud of you. Not for catching her, but for staying calm while you did. And for the first time in weeks, I slept without waking up in the middle of the night wondering if I was being paranoid. Because I wasn't. I'd just been paying attention. 2 weeks after Laura moved out, I thought it was finally over. The silence in my apartment was heavy, but peaceful. No more tense conversations about our future that sounded more like contract negotiations. Then came the first message. Laura, hey, can we talk? I know I messed up. I just want to explain. I didn't reply. The next day, I got a call from her mother, a woman who'd always been polite but distant. Jake, dear, she said in that soft, practiced tone, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Laura's been so distraught. She said something about inheritance and lawyers. You know how young people blow things out of proportion. I almost laughed. She hired a lawyer to check my family's finances before the wedding. A pause. Then, well, yes, but surely you understand she just wanted to protect herself too. Marriage is a partnership. Then why didn't she tell me before she did it? Silence. When I hung up, I realized Laura wasn't trying to apologize. She was trying to control the narrative. By the end of the week, mutual friends started messaging me. Hey, man, Laura says you two broke up because your dad disinherited you? Is that true? I almost admired her strategy. Make herself the victim before the truth caught up. So I didn't argue. I didn't explain. I just said, she's free to tell her version. But I had one thing she didn't. Proof. See, when she'd met with that lawyer, she'd used my family's business contact, her mistake. That meant every piece of correspondence went through the firm that handled my father's estate, and they documented everything. Every email, every note, every just curious how much of his assets become marital property after marriage. I never released it. I didn't have to, because karma did the heavy lifting. 2 weeks later, one of her lawyer's interns, apparently a classmate of my sister's, mentioned her name at a party, talking about the fiancé who tried to pre-game the will. Word spread fast. By Monday, people who'd once called her relationship goals were quietly deleting their couple photos with her tagged. That's when she came to my apartment again. It was raining, fitting, honestly. She looked smaller somehow, makeup smudged, clutching an umbrella like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Jake, please, she said when I opened the door. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I stood aside but didn't invite her in. I thought you didn't care about the money, I said. I don't. I was just scared. I wanted to feel secure. My ex used me, Jake. I didn't want to go through that again. Then why didn't you trust me enough to tell me that? She blinked. Because you're too calm. You never show if you're upset. I thought maybe you wouldn't care if. If what? If I made sure I'd be protected. That was it. The truth, raw and pathetic. You weren't protecting yourself, I said quietly. You were trying to make sure you profited no matter what happened. She started crying again. Can't we just start over? I shook my head. No, because you weren't honest when you had the chance. And now you're just sorry it didn't work. A week later, I saw her post something on Instagram. Some people only love you when you make them feel safe, not when you make them face themselves. Her followers flooded the comments with sympathy. But I just smiled, because I didn't need to defend myself anymore. Everyone who mattered already knew. And as for Laura, the woman who once tried to understand how much my love was worth, she finally realized the answer. Nothing. Point 1 SD update, 6 months later. It's been half a year since that whole mess with Laura blew up, and honestly, it feels like a different lifetime. At first, I was angry, not because of the money or the will, but because of what it revealed. That someone I was ready to marry saw me as an opportunity, not a partner. But that anger didn't last long. It turned into something quieter, clarity. After everything, I decided to take some time away from the city. I moved closer to my dad's place and started helping with the family business more seriously. It wasn't about proving anything. It was about rebuilding, this time on my own terms. And then, 2 months ago, I met someone new. Her name's Emily, an architect working with our firm on a new housing project. The first time we met, she spilled coffee on my shirt, panicked, and apologized 100 times. I just laughed. She looked at me like she didn't expect me to be calm about it. What struck me wasn't that she was different, it was that she was real. No pretenses, no tests, no games. She doesn't ask about my family's money. She asks about me. Meanwhile, Laura tried to reach out again, twice. The first time, she emailed me. I heard about your company's expansion. I'm happy for you. I hope you're doing okay. I didn't reply. The second time, she texted from a new number. I miss what we had. Can we talk? I left it on read. I've learned that sometimes silence is the loudest answer you can give. But here's the thing. I recently found out through a mutual friend that Laura's lawyer friend dropped her as a client after her story got around. Apparently, she's been trying to rebuild her reputation at a new job, but people talk. The story followed her. Do I feel bad? Not really. Actions have consequences, and she wrote her own ending long before I did. Funny enough, Dad told me the other day, you handled that better than I ever could have. Maybe. Or maybe I just finally learned that some betrayals don't need revenge, they just need distance. Final update, 1 year later. A year has passed since everything with Laura ended, and I finally understand what peace feels like. Life has slowed down. In the best way possible. The business my dad and I run has expanded to 3 cities now. Emily and I are still together. And I'll be honest, she's the reason I don't wake up every day waiting for something to go wrong anymore. She's steady, thoughtful, and more importantly, she values honesty over everything else. But this story isn't about love. It's about closure. Last week, I attended a regional business conference. It was one of those events where everyone knows everyone. Investors, founders, media. I was there to represent our company, to give a talk on sustainable development projects. And then I saw her. Laura. She was standing near the refreshments table, talking to a small group, her confidence polished but slightly brittle. The kind of calm people wear when they're still holding their breath inside. For a moment, I froze. Not out of longing, but out of surprise at how small the moment felt compared to how big it used to be. She saw me too, and her face changed, not dramatically, just a flicker. Recognition, regret, maybe both. After my presentation, she walked up to me. You look good, she said softly. I saw your feature in Forbes. Congratulations. I smiled politely. Thanks, Laura. How have you been? She hesitated, trying to figure things out. It's been a rough year. I nodded. Yeah, I heard. There was a silence, the kind that used to make me want to fill it, to fix things, to smooth it all over. This time, I just let it breathe. I never meant to hurt you, she said finally. I know, I replied. You just didn't think it would cost you anything. That made her eyes drop to the floor. For a second, I thought she might cry, but instead, she just whispered, you were always smarter than I gave you credit for. I smiled faintly. No, I just finally learned to listen when people tell me who they are. She nodded, wiped a tear she tried to hide, and walked away. I watched her blend into the crowd, like a ghost fading out of a story that no longer needed her. Later that night, Emily met me at the hotel bar after her own work meeting. I didn't tell her the full story right away, just that I ran into someone from my past. She squeezed my hand and said, well, whoever she was, I'm glad she let you go. And I realized something then. Closure doesn't come when someone apologizes. It comes when their absence finally feels lighter than their presence ever did. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need her to feel small. All I needed was to know I'd outgrown the version of myself who tolerated being seen as less than I was. Laura chased money and image. I chased peace and found it. Funny how sometimes that's the richest ending of all.